30 seconds used. One minute used. Minute 30 used.
I gotta be honest, one of my biggest guilty pleasures is that I really love doom scrolling TikTok. And if you're on TikTok anytime in the past couple of years, as outdated as it may be, you should know one little penguin, a brown, fluffy penguin named Pesto. See, Pesto the penguin became a massive trend. He went viral for one simple reason. He was way bigger than his parents, and while his parents were a chic black and white, see, Pesto the penguin was bigger. He was fluffier, and he had these brown feathers. Almost all of the internet, who weren't zoologists, may I add, had no clue that that's just how these penguins are born. And eventually, Pesto wouldn't be such an outcast. He would shed off his feathers and become beloved, just like everyone else. Yet still, even when Pesto was in its pre-pubescent stages, he was still loved by all of the internet. And it's this love that kind of reminds me of the picture I was given today, which is a little Kermit the Frog doll looking into his phone, which I think is his camera, looking at it and then hugging it, which I interpret as self-love. And I have to admit that I agree. We should love ourselves, because when you do, so many amazing things happen. And we're gonna look through that in a couple of key ways. First off, an amazing poet. Secondly, a mathematician from hundreds of years ago, before finally looking at a man who sucked at his job. Now, when we look to an amazing poet, I'm not talking about any poet, but rather Salome Agberogi, a woman who was studying for the SATs. Only problem was she was going insane. She needed a little bit of a break and eventually started writing poetry. Poems about herself, the home she grew up in, the streets of LA, something creative, just to take her mind off of things. Until eventually she realized that she loved this poetry more than the SATs. She eventually gave this poetry at different cafes, then different concerts, until eventually she got herself giving her poetry at the White House, where she got the title of the National Youth Poet Laureate of America. She now goes to Harvard, speaks at the UN, is one of the most successful poets of our time, and may I add, she's like 20 years old. Salome Agberogi understood that when you love yourself, you can go so much farther in this world, just like Kermit did when he's hugging his phone. However, we can jump out of our pen and paper and look to our history books, where we can note a man by the name of Ibn Sina. And I use the term man, but I really should say kid. See, he was a 12-year-old who was obsessed with learning, had new facts about history, new types of math, and let's be honest, if you've ever met a 12-year-old, you know that they're a little mouthy. So what he decided to do was run off to the scholars of the time and try and have debates, try and have massive discourse and discussion, until eventually Ibn Sina kicked one of this biggest scholars of the time's ass in a debate. He kind of won. Only problem is if you've ever met an old man, you should also know they don't like being beaten by a 12-year-old. So Ibn Sina was forbidden from ever talking again. See, they literally kicked him out of the town they were in. They said he was stealing or reciting the Quran without actually giving it its credit, which was a big time because this is during the golden age of Islam. Yet Ibn Sina, even after he left, still had self-love. He still kept participating and creating his works, and some of his math is still used today as a massive benchmark for success. So we see that when Ibn Sina is able to love himself, be just like Kermit, well, he turns a situation of being an outcast into being a scholar. Now, we can get out of our history books and look into a man who was at a dead-end job. See, he had one, and that was to make some type of adhesive. A super glue, if you will. Only problem, he couldn't really figure the super part out. Every adhesive that he made failed, time and time again. The best that he could probably do was get this like half-baked adhesive that could stick to itself but fell apart half the time. And as you might imagine, if you suck at your job, you're gonna get fired. And that's exactly what happened. But Art Fry realized that he should still love what he has, love who he is, and he took that little adhesive and created a new invention. See, Art Fry took a little adhesive that could barely stick to itself and made a massive innovation, something that we're all going to use tomorrow in Parley called a sticky note. See, Art Fry took this massive innovation, this massive failure, and completely turned it 180. Not through making a good glue, not through being good at his job, but through understanding that self-love can take you so much farther than just being stuck with whatever reality truly is. When Art Fry lived like Kermit, hugged his phone, hugged himself, we got amazing innovations, like the sticky note. When we look to our picture today, we're given Kermit looking into his camera, realizing that he loves what he sees, and hugging himself. We interpreted that to mean that you should have self-love, and we absolutely agree with it, for a couple of key reasons. Because we see it no matter where we look. We see it in the poetry that we listen to, with Salome Agneroji and her simple study break. We see it throughout all of our history books, and the math that we still teach today through a mouthy 12-year-old loving himself and being able to create so much more. And we see it in something as simple as an office utensil like a sticky note, noting that Art Fry loved himself, loved who he was and what he had. But we also see it in something as natural, something as simple as little baby Pesto shedding off his feathers and being loved by all of his family.